Welcome to my tour of the Great Orme. I go on a running tour around the Great Orme, started at the Trevone Hotel, which overlooks the beach at Llandudno in North Wales. Here's an overview of the map of North Wales. Here's a shot from the Little Orme overlooking the beach, and you can see the Great Orme, which is the mountain in the distance. I started in the dark. It was probably quarter to 7 local time in the morning, and ran along the beach and got to the foot of the Great Orme where I started recording. And here I am going up a relatively steep slope up the start of the Great Orme, and you can see it's pretty dark. And I see these figures on the road. Well, it's sheep, and the Great Orme is covered in sheep. They're sleeping on the road. I disturbed this guy right here. Had to run around him. And you can see, looking out to the east, the sun was just coming up, and again, the road's going quite a ways up. It was quite a relatively steep slope in the first half of the run. I was going quite slow. And the Orme was founded by Vikings, and Orme is a name for sea serpent. It's a Norse word for sea serpent. By this point, I'm probably 150 feet or so above sea level, and I've got walls of limestone to the left of the road and quite a drop off on the right hand side of the road. This is a stone wall running along the side of the road. It was a dry stone wall, which means there is no concrete or mortar holding the stones together. It's probably been there for hundreds of years. And I stopped a couple times just to get a picture of the scenery. Of course, as the sun was coming up, it was quite beautiful. As I came around the first bend, the first major bend of the Great Orme, it was quite a spectacular sight. Cliffs on the left-hand side of the road and a drop off on the right-hand side of the road. Again, there's sheep everywhere, and I could see this lighthouse, which was built in 1862, on the side of the Orme. So again, I kept running along the side of the road and heading out towards the lighthouse, which again was built in 1862, but is now actually a guest house, a bed and breakfast. It was decommissioned in the early or in the late 1900s. The light was taken to a museum, which is now actually on the top of the Orme in a visitor center. So the road is relatively untraveled. Here's a picture of the lighthouse. The road is relatively untraveled. Here's my wife and my son. We traveled around the road afterwards and stopped at the little cafe, which is beside the lighthouse. As I got around the bend past the lighthouse, and again, there was relatively no traffic as I came along here, and the road is a one-way road, so I was going in the same direction the traffic would go. Again, sheep everywhere, and they're just left to graze just freely. And by this point, I had reached the highest peak on the Orme, on the road. I was pretty winded at this point. I was halfway through the run, or 25 minutes or so into the run, and got to the other side of the Orme. So now I'm on the west side of the Orme, and I'm looking out over the Irish Sea, and there's a break in the land here where the Conwy River starts, and the Conwy River funnels down into a smaller, more narrow river, and it's absolutely beautiful. You can look across and obviously see the other side into Conwy in northern Wales. These are Kashmirian goats, and they're wild on the Orme. The story behind the Kashmirian goats is they were gifted to Queen Victoria in the 1800s by the royal Indian family. They gave her two pairs of these Kashmirian goats. Well, she didn't like them. Apparently, they were quite gross to her and they were trying to mate with her own herd, so she banished them to the Orme where they were left to just freely reproduce. And so they're all over the Orme now. And now I'm to the other side, and I'm running around on the west and south side of the Orme, and starting to head down now. I reached the highest peak. I'm starting to head down, and there's an area on the Orme called Millionaire's Row, and these are all very exclusive houses, with of course the granite walls or the limestone walls behind them, and obviously right on the sea, on the mouth of the Conwy River. And I can start to run it down. I'm coming back down into civilization. There's a two-way road here, and this is the access down into Millionaire's Row, where those $1 million houses are, right down on the water. Across the river is the village of Conwy, and before we get to that, you can see there's some sheep, obviously just left to graze all over the place. They're in a driveway here. Across the river is the village of Conwy, and Conwy's got quite a history. There's Conwy Castle, which you'll see a picture of in just a second, which was built by King Edward I, who was otherwise known as King Edward Longshanks. And I'm starting to get down. There's a few houses now as we're starting to come down towards the other side of the Orme. And I have the mouth of the Conwy River, which feeds into the Irish Sea, heading out to the west and to the north. So if you were to boat out back behind me, you'd head over towards Ireland. And there, of course, is the Conwy Castle. That's a picture that we took when we toured later in that day. Heading down back into civilization now. There's a grate in the road coming up here, and I wondered what that was, and I found out later that that was a area where they stopped the sheep. Here I run across it here from getting back down into the. It was a deterrent for the sheep to follow the road down into the village, because their hooves would get caught in the grate, so it would keep them up on top of the Orme. And now I'm back down into the village of Llandudno, and starting to run back towards the other side of the Orme where I started on the beach. It's just an absolutely beautiful area. This was an mid-October, and the weather was fantastic. It was in the mid or like low mid-teens as far as temperature goes, Celsius. And here I am back on the beach. There's uh, many hotels along the beach road, and of course there's this big long boardwalk. Basically, it's all concrete, of course, but looking out over Liverpool Bay on this side of the Orme. And I look back, and you can see some of the hotels and cafes, restaurants at the start of where I started the run at the foot of the Orme. And there's looking up back towards the Orme back behind me. I made my way back along the beach. This is the St. George's Hotel here on the corner, a very famous hotel. It's been around for a while. Royalty has stayed there. And then I would come along the row here back to the Trevone Hotel. And here we are back at the Trevone Hotel. So it was a really great experience, beautiful scenery. I encourage you, if you're a runner and you do travel to North Wales, this would be definitely a bucket list type of trip. Here's an overview of my run from my watch, my running watch, and of course my stats. It was 5.61 miles from start to finish around the Orme. Took me just under an hour. It was a nice leisurely run, and I encourage you to give it a try.